Hi and welcome to my video. Today I want to do a review of A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and I also want to take some time to talk about what it means to be desensitized. We hear the term desensitized talked a lot in reference to horror, where people say, oh, I'm super desensitized to horror, or people have talked about it when approaching this book. This book is obviously super popular on BookTube. People seem to read it as a challenge to themselves to see if they will cry, because it's a harrowing book. And a lot of people use the word desensitized sort of to preface them before they go into it, and then they end up breaking down reading it. So I have a lot of thoughts about desensitization, what it means, and my own experiences of desensitization and what it means to be desensitized. But first I want to do a review. To start with, I think I'm just going to do like a general review without spoilers, and I think later on when I start to talk about desensitization, I think there might be some spoilers for the book, but for now it's just going to be general. So, A Little Life, this absolute tome of a book. I'm just going to go out there and say I thought this was amazing. I'm sad that I put off reading it for so long. I'm putting it down because it's too heavy just to hold the entire time. I saw a lot of people doing reading vlogs of this on BookTube, a lot of the bigger booktubers doing reading vlogs of it, and I put it off because it sounded really interesting, but when I saw people being absolutely emotionally destroyed and like completely breaking down on camera, or saying that they were in reading slumps afterwards, or that they were completely devastated and they were so heartbroken they needed time to grieve afterwards, I was like, maybe I'll wait till I feel emotionally strong before reading this. And then I went through like a tough period in March, and I was like, yeah, I'm not in an emotionally resilient place to read anything that's going to destroy me. But then in May, I picked it up. I just picked it up and decided to go for it. I thought, why not? And I do not regret it. It's amazing. It was a 5-star read for me. So in A Little Life, if you don't already know, it's about 4 friends. So we've got JB, Willem, Malcolm and Jude. But the story is really about Jude. Jude is the heart and soul of the story. So I went into this expecting, kind of waiting for myself to fall apart or to be torn apart by the book. And we follow these boys who met in college, who grow into men, and their lives as in throughout adulthood. And this book has a lot of very triggering and sensitive topics explored, such as drug use or drug misuse, childhood abuse, sexual trauma. There's even stuff about dealing with your own sexuality. There's loads of huge topics explored. It lightly touches on issues of racial identity as well, or non-identity, and it's really, beautifully written as well. And I feel like I'm not really saying much about it because it's so hard to explain without like spoiling parts of the story, and I don't want to do that for this part. But it's a story where it's about the characters. There is not much plot, and if that puts you off, then just try it anyway, because I'm not a plot person anyway. I'm a character-driven reader, and this book definitely fulfills my need for that, because these characters feel real. And I've heard people talk about the characters feeling real in their own vlogs, in the other BookTube vlogs, and I was like, sure, whatever. But they do. It's honestly some of the best character work I've ever written. They feel like real people. You genuinely care and love for them, and you feel sad when things don't go right for them. And I see what people mean when they say it's hard to recommend this book because it's so challenging. And if I knew someone was sensitive, or maybe hasn't had much exposure to such hugely emotional topics, I probably wouldn't recommend the book. But if I thought someone could handle it, I definitely would, because I loved it. I was completely drawn into this world with these characters, and completely blown away by it. And when I finished it, I was like, whew, that was amazing. It was completely amazing. I went to my partner immediately. He was like, you need to read this book. He doesn't really read. But I was like, you need to read it, because it's just so good. So I want to move towards sort of spoilery stuff, because it feels important to talk about, especially in terms of desensitization. So I was expecting to be completely torn apart by this book, because that was the reaction other people had, and I wasn't. And that's not to say I didn't feel sad, or I didn't feel hurt, or I didn't feel bereaved at points, but I didn't cry at all. Let's be real, I didn't cry at all. And I think that's part of the problem with this book, is what stops people reading it is because of the so much build-up and hype around how emotionally painful it is, or is it's supposed to be, and it is emotionally painful. But for me, I didn't cry. So for me, it feels important to talk about what desensitization means. Just because I didn't cry, I started to think that, I was like, oh my god, am I emotionally broken? I started to worry, like, is there something wrong with me? Why am I not completely broken by this book? And I still don't feel broken by it. I still think about it a lot, and it's definitely one of my favourite books, definitely a 5-star books, but I'm not broken by it. And I thought about it a lot. I talked about it a lot with my partner as well, bless him, because I was like, there must be something wrong with me, because I do not feel completely emotionally devastated. And that made me think about what it means to be desensitized. And I think when people hear the word desensitized, they think it means an absence of feeling. And I think that's really not true. I think that's really misleading. I think when people say, oh, I'm desensitized, or I have no feelings, or I'm dead inside, that's more of their own sort of psychological defences in play, rather than the actual state of being, because some of the people that have made comments saying they have no feelings have been completely devastated by this book. Whereas I'm someone that I would say is very emotional, I'm very in touch with my feelings, I'm very sensitive, I do cry a lot, you know, I'm very open with my emotions and my emotional way of being. And I do cry at things. I cried at some episodes of In Treatment the other day that I was watching with my partner, but I wasn't as emotionally hurt by this story. So I think when we talk about desensitization, I think it's about how much exposure you've had to topics rather than about not feeling things. Because for me, my job as a therapist, I am exposed to a lot of trauma all the time. And I'm okay with it. No, that sounds wrong. I'm not okay with it in that way, but I can tolerate it. If I couldn't tolerate it, I wouldn't be able to do my job. I wouldn't be able to be there for people. I wouldn't be able to listen to it. I wouldn't be able to work with it. So my tolerance for sensitive and painful topics is quite high. So when I was hearing all these awful things that were happening, namely around Jude, because Jude is a traumatic character, Jude is a character that has some of the most severe and most thoroughly explored trauma in this book. And when I was hearing those things, it didn't necessarily strike me or hurt me in the same way as it would someone else, because I am desensitized to these things. I did feel sad. I have to feel some things about it, you know. I didn't not feel anything. I felt sad and angry and hurt for him. I wanted desperately for it to not be the case and to make it better, but I wasn't completely devastated, and I wasn't broken down to tears, because if I sat with a client and they told me some of their trauma and I started crying, it would be a really weird and not okay situation, and it would be taking away the session from them. So I'm desensitized. I think that's what desensitization means. It's not saying you don't feel things, but it means that things maybe don't impact you in the same way, or it means that you had enough exposure so that these things don't come as a shock or aren't as painful to witness for you. Because I don't think I'm a feelingless person. I don't think I'm dead inside in any way at all. I'm extremely sensitive, actually. But I was able to tolerate this book, and I think that actually enhanced my enjoyment of it. I think it actually made me able to really connect to the characters more, because I wasn't trying to guard against all this trauma. I wasn't guarded against the pain. I wasn't having to take care of myself, because I felt okay. I felt so moved and connected to all the characters, particularly Jude. Jude is the character that we all just, you know, root for, because he's the one that has the most pain, you know. But it was okay. And yeah, and I don't think that I'm dead inside, and my panic about, oh my god, what's wrong with me, how can I not feel anything, subsided the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about what it means to be desensitized, you know. Like I would say I'm desensitized to horror as well, but it's not because I don't feel scared or anything, although a lot of the time horror isn't scary anymore. It's because I've been exposed to it, so I kind of know what to expect, or how to process it, or how to interpret it. I have a much higher tolerance and resilience. But that also depends on where I'm at, because if I had read this in March, I probably would have been completely broken by it. But because I read this in a time where I feel kind of back to my normal resilience levels, it feels fine. So I think that with this book, it is about knowing your own tolerance and knowing what you've been exposed to. And if you know that you can handle serious topics, then you probably will really, really enjoy this book. You'll probably absolutely love it, because I did, and it's one of my favourites now. I literally bought an art print of like one of the covers to put in our new flat. By the way, we're moving, that's why our flat looks like a mess, I forgot to say. We are moving, so we're unpacking books, and I thought I'd just sit down and film a video. I didn't explain that before. So yeah, A Little Life is a beautifully written book. It's harrowing, it's moving. I've literally never seen character work like it. It's phenomenal. It should be read. It deserves to have more credit. I don't agree that it's torture porn, as people say, because torture porn to me is like stuff that's deliberately designed to cause you pain and discomfort, like Saw or Hostel. These films have great stories around, but they classed as like torture porn films because they're designed to make you uncomfortable. They're witnessing some visceral stuff. But I think this is a very well thought through character exploration. So to me, and I'm not saying it isn't torture porn, because for some people it is, but for me it wasn't. It was psychologically fascinating, it was emotionally intense and fascinating, it was beautifully written, it was a ride, it was an escape. When I was reading this book, I was with these characters, I was in their world, I wasn't here for a little bit. And also, I like the way she does it, where she explores these serious topics with characters that are like kind of out of, I'm gonna say but my realm of experience. I'm not like a movie star like Willem, I'm not a famous artist, you know, I'm kind of just a normal person, if you can, there's no such thing as normal, but I'm in that realm, you know, of just plodding along on the earth. I think it helps tell the story having these characters that are kind of like what we would class as higher status, that are a bit sort of in the kind of almost celebrity world. Willem is a celebrity, he's an actor, you know, in that kind of world, because I think it kind of dilutes some of the pain and trauma as well, because if it was a story about horribly deprived, you know, people from really low socioeconomic groups that are struggling day to day anyway, that the pain would have been so much worse, because that's so much more, I guess, relatable, and it would feel like there was no relief. But the fact that like at some points they are really wealthy and they are, you know, really loved and supported and blah blah blah, I think that adds to a sense of relief. So there is some good happening for them, as well as all the bad stuff. If it was a constant cycle of just terribleness and marginalisation, it would just be too much. Although that could work, that might be a really interesting story, to be honest. Yeah, there was something else I wanted to talk about that I really liked about this book. Oh, I thought it was really clever the way she was deliberately ambiguous. She, being Hanya Yanagihara, was deliberately ambiguous about Jude's racial identity. So, because you got the characters, you got Willem, who's white and traditionally handsome, you got JB, who's black, you got Malcolm, who's mixed heritage black, and then you have Jude, who is ambiguous. He's described as not white, he's described as having beautiful green eyes and hair that lightens in the sun, but we don't know what his racial identity is. And I think that adds to the sense of his sort of mystery around his character, because we only get stuff revealed about his character throughout the plot. You don't like get it all sort of at once, and it adds to the ambiguity and like separation from him, because he's a character that has had so much trauma that's not being dealt with soon enough, that he has a constant sense of detachment from people, including the reader. He's constantly pushing away and protecting himself, and having another sort of barrier of not being able to know what he really like is racially, adds that layer. It's like from Toni Morrison's short story recitative. I'd never know how to say that. Recitative. I don't know how to say it. But from Toni Morrison's short story, where she has about the two women who we don't know which one's black and which one's white, and it really impacts how you read the story and how you feel about it. We find empathy and connection through understanding people's identities and stuff, and it's a barrier in our connection, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but it definitely emphasises the disconnection from Jude and the want for connection as well, because everyone in the story wants to connect to him, but he's so fearful and guarded that you can't. And I think it's just fascinating. I definitely need to read this book again at some point, and I really want to just think about it more and piece things together more, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there first. I think it's a fabulous book. I absolutely love it. It's definitely added to my top 5 favourite. And I think it should be read if only if you know that you have the tolerance to do so. I think if you know that some things upset you and you're emotionally sensitive, then don't put yourself through it, because this is a heavy book. It's a heavy book, and I did need to like stop afterwards and be like, whoa, damn, that was a lot. Even though I know I'm desensitized and I can tolerate this sort of stuff. And also that isn't necessarily something to be like, ooh, I'm desensitized, yeah. And I think some people treat it like a trophy, like I made it through this book. It's not there for that. It's there to be enjoyed as a piece of literature, not for you to prove that you can do it. And it shouldn't. And that gives it a healthy attitude where people force themselves to read it because it's popular and because they want to do this challenge, not because they want to enjoy the literature. If you don't have the tolerance, don't do it. You're just going to hurt yourself. And this book it's so brilliant. It deserves to be read and enjoyed, not read as a challenge. So basically, take care of yourself is the message I'm saying. And if you can't read it, don't. If you can, do. It's amazing. So that's all I have to say for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you around.